Welcome everyone to the third night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, third night of the Spring Rights Literary Festival. I am Robin Schwartz, the Program and Grant Director of the Community Arts Partnership. And the Spring Rights Festival is just one of our many programs and services. We have other public programs and grants and workshops for artists and their audiences. And our website, if you want to check it out, is artspartner.org, and I'm going to put that in the chat. And if you are not on our mailing list, I have your names and emails, so you will be on our mailing list. I was going to say you could go to our homepage and click a box and do that. And I want to introduce Leah. Leah Davis is helping me with the technical parts of this event. And if you have any technical questions, you can chat with her directly. As most of you know, as most of you know, you know how when you read your notes over and over and over again, by about the 10th time, you decide not to look at your notes, but then you forget where you are. So I'm often extremely organized for the first 10 times and then completely lose it. We have about 15 more Spring Rights events happening tomorrow and then next Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We also have 8 writing workshops. Everything is free, happening from December through March. So please continue to join in on these great events. Our sponsors need to be thanked. We're so grateful for Ithaca College, Wegmans, M&T Bank, the Odyssey Bookstore, and the Ithaca Marriott. We also have funding from New York State Council on the Arts and Poets and Writers. If you would like to support the Community Arts Partnership, we have to ask, and everything we do with our little staff, that would be amazing. We need your support. And it's support not only for this festival, but for everything that we do. Any amount is great. I'm going to write in chat, $15, $25, $5,000. It's all great. I will put the link into the chat. So everyone is on mute, and let's all use the chat function to talk to each other and to make comments and to ask questions. And I think I'm done. I'm going to turn everything over now to Jennifer Savron Kelly.
Hi, thanks, Robin. Thank you, Community Arts Partnership, for hosting us. So sorry, I'm just trying to figure out where I'm at. So I'm very excited tonight that we are doing this reading. It's called Life's a Joke, a reading to make you laugh if it doesn't make you cry. And that's because a couple of us are literary writers, and so we are not as well versed in comedy. And so our work may be a little bit more on the strange side than the funny side. So I'm really glad that we have Kenneth, McLaurin, and Holmes here to help us with the funny part. So everyone's going to, I'll introduce myself, and then as each person reads, they'll introduce the person who follows. But tonight we have, I'll be reading, I'll be sort of opening us up a little bit, and then we'll have Holmes, Bob Prowl, Melanie Conroy-Goldman, and Kenneth McLaurin. So I'm going to start things off, like I said, a little on the stranger side. I have a story that is going to be published at the end of this month called The Nipple. And it is a queer and feminist response to this novella by Philip Roth called The Breast, which, if you haven't read, is a pretty misogynistic and aggressive book. It's a terrible book. Don't read it. So The Nipple is, as I said, a sort of feminist and queer response. Thank you, Melanie, for that wonderful chat. So without further ado, I will just say that don't blame me because Philip Roth did this first. Okay, The Nipple for Philip Roth. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say one more thing. The other thing I will say is that I'm only reading the beginning of the story just for a couple minutes, the first few pages, but the story is basically about a couple who seems to be a cisgendered heterosexual couple until a nipple starts growing on their bedroom wall. Okay, so without further ado, The Nipple. Again, I wake in pieces. My left shoulder, who knows where, off to some distant land. Toes gone to the beach. What is it, says Seth. Shoulder, I say. Toes, I can't feel them. You're dreaming. He rolls back onto his side. A picture floats across my vision. A single toe, sparkling in the sun. Sand stretching behind it as far as the eye can see. Wish you were here. No, I say, unsure whether I'm talking to my husband or the toe. I try to sit up, but it's hard without a shoulder. So much harder than I would have expected. Who knew the shoulder contained muscles involved in sitting, I say, but he's already snoring again. I push myself upright with my one good arm. That's when I see it. At first, it looks like a knot in the reclaimed wood lining the bedroom wall, small and dark, organic, earthy. As my eyes focus on it, I feel the rest of myself come back together, the magic of daylight. I flex my feet, wiggle my toes, all there. Circle my shoulders up and back, confirming two. I check myself for pain, which as usual is everywhere, though nowhere I can put my finger on. Finish testing my body, I will it to stand, navigating my way across the bedroom by the blooming light, everything tinged with a dull blue. I stand in front of the circle on the wall. It's just short of eye level. Up close, it still looks like a knot in the wood, but it's raised slightly. I reach out to test my eyesight. When my finger makes contact, I pull it away fast, as if I've touched a hot stove. It's not hot, but it's also not right, not the rough texture of untreated wood. Instead, it's soft, like a ripe fig. No, I correct myself. Like flesh, new flesh. Goosebumps lift the hair on my arms. I look more closely at the circle, believing my mind is still playing tricks on me. But when I raise my hand to touch it, it's as soft as before. This time, I let my fingertips stay. As it begins to explore, the knot tightens and hardens under my finger. It's shrunk and it's darker than before. When I let go, however, it relaxes back to its previous state. I touch it once more and get the same result, tightening, relaxing. I shudder. I decide to keep this to myself. Sorry. At 6:30, Seth wakes, launching our morning routine, feeding the cats, grinding the coffee, turning on the shower, testing the temperature. We brush teeth, get dressed, Seth smiling as I drop my robe, smiling but not touching. It's been a long time since the touching. I smile back. He delivers a steaming cup of coffee and the day's weather report, 67 and sunny. He kisses my cheek. Binghamton 56, he says. It's how we say I love you. Ever since we moved in together, whenever one of us goes away without the other, we call on our way home when we reach the road sign that says Binghamton 56, because it means we'll be back together in less than an hour. I say it too, but my mind is elsewhere, back on the knot in the wood, the softness of it under my fingertip, the strange sensation it loosened in me as it tightened. I want to touch it again, make sure I hadn't been dreaming. Finally, Seth is out the door, and I still have a few more minutes before I have to go. Over the next few mornings, I repeat my new routine, waking early to steal a few minutes with the knot, lingering with it after Seth leaves for work. He is none the wiser. His mornings, like the rest of his days, are filled with a comforting order. He performs his personal grooming tasks according to the sequence in which his supplies are lined up on his dresser: deodorant, hair comb, facial moisturizer. He puts his pants on left leg first and buttons his shirts from bottom to top so that he never misses the bottom button. He bicycles to his IT job at the nearby university and chains his bike to the same rack. We find our ways to survive. It's at least a week before I notice a change. Two changes, actually. The first is significant. Now, when I wake, after the pieces of my body cobble themselves back together, the pain takes longer to follow. The second change is even more significant. The knot no longer looks like a knot. No longer dark and twisted, it has smoothed out, lightened into a uniform beige. That's impossible, I whispered to it one morning. But as the rising sun reconstructs our bedroom, I can't deny what I see. By the end of 2 weeks, The knot has transformed so much that it no longer resembles wood. Pink and fleshy with a small round tip, it has become what I've been hoping and fearing it was all along. Still, I can't say the word. I continue to wake early and hang around for as long as I can before leaving for work, but I try not to touch it anymore. It feels disrespectful now. I want to be close, but it's getting harder to keep my hands to myself. Seth remains unaware of the abnormality on the wall, but he's noticed I've been moving more easily. You seem to be feeling a bit better, yeah, he says. Yeah. He kisses the tip of my nose. Glad to hear it. What do you think it is? I shrug. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So I didn't introduce myself, I'm sorry. I'm Jennifer Savran Kelly. I'm a writer. And if you're at all interested in seeing what I'm up to, you can just go to my website, which is my full name, jennifersavrankelly.com. Anyway, thank you. And so now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Comendante Christopher Holmes. From 1974 to 2019, Comendante Holmes was the president and CEO of Four Seasons Total Landscaping in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, until his capitalist younger brother organized a coup and got him voted out. But this is how the Comendante found himself in Ithaca, trying to get his 2020 presidential campaign off the ground. A campaign which, as most of you know, did ultimately fail, paving the way for Joe Biden's victory. But always quick to monetize his misfortune, the Comendante has spent the past 2 weeks teaching himself how to write. And he has been pleased to find very quick success in the form of his memoir, Comendante Chris Holmes, My Revolution. So I'm very pleased to introduce you to Comendante Christopher Holmes.
Thank you very much, Jen. That's the intro I always wanted to write for myself. That was great reading too. Thank you. The nipple. The revolution has just started, people. It's just started. Join with me. I'm going to read 2 pieces here tonight, just 2 short things. The first one is called The Beauty of Poetry. He writes poems about how poetry really sort of means to me. And so this is called The Beauty of Poetry. A poem is a fragile thing. It is the last peregrination of the dying hawk, its expiring breath dispersed into the air. A poem is the light behind the hoarfrost, multitudinous, the shifting light of God. A poem is the sacred silence within the myriad whirl of life. A poem is the rancid fart of the man on the bar stool next to me, a mix of beef and cheese run through a garden of poo. A poem is the sweet laughter of children at 6 a.m. outside your door after they have discovered the vacuum. A poem is the discomfort of the caught masturbator. It is the shivering diarrhea of a dog who has gotten into the cookies. A poem is the visible butt crack of the bewildered plumber. The beauty of poetry. Thank you. Hear you, Pam. Okay, here's a piece. It's called It is the Quiet That Gets You. Sure, it's the quiet that gets you here, especially here now around Christmas. Even the ones that is here keep to themselves, like they were scared to laugh, and sure, just what the use of life anyway without a laugh? Ugh, don't mind me with the complaining. There's no one could say I haven't had it good. The best, thank God. A husband who could have his pint on a Friday night, then come home in decent enough shape, most Fridays. A good man. Finally, and after all of that, it was the heart that got him. The heart of all things. We thought that was the only good part of him. It started with a bit of an infection. That's what brought him to the hospital at first. He went blind in one eye. Just suddenly, like, bang, blind in an eye. His right. He'd always had the hemorrhoids. That was nothing new. They used to devil him all together. Oh, very painful. Then there in the hospital itself, him with the blind eye, the right one, and the hemorrhoids, and the doctors themselves all utterly and completely baffled as to what was going on with the eye, he lost the use of his hand, the left, opposite side from the eye, which was curious to me. Not that he was ever one to complain. That's why the good Lord has given me an extra eye and an extra hand. Ugh, but he must have been in terrible pain all the same. I can still see enough of the beautiful ladies, especially yourself, missus. And sure, I can grip enough to wipe me own arse, and what else could a man who's 80 ask? He'd say. Always cheerful. Never one to complain. Even after they had to amputate the big toe of his left foot. Wait, was it his left? Yes, his left. Left toe, right hand, left eye. Bit of a pattern to it. Never one to complain, as I said. Not even a word after the infection in his wee fella from the catheter. Oh, no, that couldn't have been pleasant. But always in the good spirits. Ah, sweetie, come on, but give it a rub, he'd say, as a gas. It looked awful, all red and swollen. Bad swollen. We could tolerate, even find funny, the constant farting. Something having to do with the colon, which was, according to the doctors, in terrible shape itself. But God's mercy, they did stink. They'd clear a room of doctors pretty quick, I tell you. Trumpety, too. Right there in the middle of a chat, blast, blast, blast. At least we could laugh about it. Ugh, but Christ, the smell of him. Breaking his hip walking to the bathroom, surely that was just bad luck. I'll confess this now. I had a crisis of faith over the swollen tongue. I prayed, Lord, I prayed, now hear him with the eye and the hand and the amputated big toe of the left foot and the misshapen colon leading to the terrible farts and the broken hip and now a tongue so swollen he can only burble out the odd sounds. That would test a person's faith, so it would. On top of it all then, athlete's foot. What sense does that make? When they wrote abnormal uterine bleeding on his chart, we figured there was some mistake. And there was, wrong chart. I think maybe they were just used to adding ailments to his chart, to be honest, a bit of a habit. When he finally did go the brave man, may God forgive me, it was a blessing. It was the heart that got him, which we'd been under the impression was the only good part of him. No, took him in his sleep. No more pain for himself, gone to his deserved rest. So now I'm up in this place, which is nice, I shouldn't complain. Just the Spanish girl, Marta, who comes by to help me get around with the cleaning, which I'm not much up for. She's very nice, but there are none here who are Irish. Not many Catholics either. Quiet. He was a great man for the crack. Always a laugh. I miss him very much. But it is Christmas and Marta will be by, and I made trifle for the two of us. And if I do say so myself, it's delicious. So there's that. There's always something good in this life. Thank you very much. That was it's the quiet that gets you. And now it is my distinct honor, privilege to introduce our next reader, Mr. Bob Prowl. Hiya, Bob. Bob Prowl has written a couple of books, it says here. He's written a couple of books.
It's pronounced Bob.
Huh? Bob. Bob Prowl. Prowl. He says none of them are that funny. I will stand up here and say that they are very, very good. And if you haven't read them, you should get them right away. None of them are very funny, but he's going to read, he's promised now, he's going to read something funny for us tonight. So no more ado, the excellent writer and a fairly decent guy, Mr. Bob Prowl.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Cap. Thank you, Jen, for putting this together. I apologize that I don't have a spouse hidden somewhere in the house that's going to like laugh at all my good lines here. Apparently we had to set that up in advance. Well done, Pam. All right, so this is just a piece of fiction that I'm working on, and we'll try it out. Willa arrives at the offices of active content engagement until 3 months ago, Millard Fillmore High School, on Christmas morning, dressed in clothes borrowed from her mother. She considered wearing Christmas flair, but any company holding job interviews today was Grinchy enough to give no shits about sparkly red and green pins and brooches. Her goal, sexy substitute teacher. The poor fit of the clothes lands closer to academic bowl contestant. The company bought out the abandoned school as a call center and converted the foyer into a lobby. Stripped senior class pictures and cases of athletic trophies. Added 2 pleather couches, 1 ficus, real, an African violet, fake, a peace lily, indeterminate, 3 low-sunk chairs, a hole cut in the wall into what was once the reception area and is now also the reception area. No one inside. Interviews on Christmas morning are a power move. The war for work-life balance started the day before day 1. Anyone who gives a shit about life outside the office need not apply. The lobby is full. 10 other people woke up Christmas morning, assessed their lives, and said, yes, I am this fucked. Miss Blank, says a woman in the hallway. Willa's hand jumps into the air. She looks at the others, smug. She has timed her arrival perfectly. Last to come, first called. I'm Carly Sanderson, Director of Human Resources for Active Content Engagement, says the woman, extending her hand. She wears a crisp, pressed pantsuit and a candy cane brooch on right lapel, life-sized and sequined. Fuck. They pass rows of lockers, 15% too small, as if Willa's grown beyond her natural size. In former classrooms, doors removed, workers hunch over terminals, reviewing questionable content for a social media site. No holiday decorations on the green brick walls. They enter the principal's office. Carly shuts the door behind them. I hope you don't think it's too much doing this today, she says, settling in behind an oak desk. Today's fine, says Willa. She sits in a chair made for a child, staring up at Carly Sanderson. Obviously, you're working. It's not like the internet stops because Christmas. The internet never stops, says Carly Sanderson. Her tone is how people talk about their young children. Oof, that internet, a handful, let me tell you. Carly Sanderson, are we doing Carly? Is it first name situation? Too soon to tell. Nods and opens her top drawer, extracting a manila folder she holds out to Willa. Paperwork, Carly Sanderson says. We subcontract for a company that's had trouble with security, she says. Willa suppresses a snort. If it were up to them, you'd sign an NDA walking through the door. I don't know anything I could disclose, says Willa. I don't know anything I could disclose, Carly Sanderson says, but I can't proceed unless you sign. Her voice is sing-song, strangely threatening. Red Riding Hood whistles through the woods. The song is meant to call the wolf. Willa scribbles her name without reading. She slides the folder across the desk. Carly Sanderson tucks it into a drawer without a glance. So, Willa. Yes, Carly? Ms. Sanderson, she corrects. Fuck. Trap. Willa and Carly might toss back white wine spritzers at happy hour, but Willa is being interviewed by Ms. Sanderson. She extracts a different folder from a different drawer. Do you consider yourself resilient, she asks, reading from the script. She tenses her fingers and leans forward. Willa mirrors, fingers tented in her lap. I think so, Ms. Sanderson, yes. And how would you define resilience? Dictionary definition, in terms of Hallmark cards, cross-stitch samplers? No inspirational posters in Ms. Sanderson's office, not helpful. I would say rising above adversity, Willa offers. Ms. Sanderson makes a pseudonumeric mark in her folder. All responses have been anticipated and encoded. That's very aspirational, says Ms. Sanderson. May I write that down? Sure. She doesn't. Here at Active Content Management, we define resilience as bounce back ability, says Ms. Sanderson. She waits for Willa's reaction. I totally see that. It's important, isn't it, to return to a calm base state? A terrible thing happens, and after an appropriate amount of time, you come back to being yourself. There's a trauma I'm leaving at home every morning, she's saying, not asking Willa to acknowledge it. Look at the baggage I have not brought to work. That makes a lot of sense, says Willa, nodding. Can you give me an example of a time you've been resilient? Something terrible you've sailed through, recovered from? She leans further forward, potential gal pal waiting for the dish. Drug addiction, abusive boyfriend, jail? Willa shakes her head. Anything horrific that's happened to you? Carly craves red meat. Universally resonant, but deeply personal. Nothing sexual, too far. Classic, but dress it up. Pantsuit trauma. My dad died, Willa says, staring at her tented fingers. Last Christmas, she adds. Christmas Day? Eve, says Willa. He had cancer. Ms. Sanderson's face slackens. Who cares? Everybody's had cancer. Really awful cancer, Willa says. In his, you know. She looks down at her lap and makes the "there are certain words we do not speak aloud" face she learned from her mother. Testicles? The other. Prostate? Willa was thinking colon, but no point arguing. Yes. Carly nods slowly. No follow-up questions for ass cancer in the script. I was right there with him the whole time. Extra words, semantic filler, right there, hit with emphasis, as if they bear content. Willa's face says it was awful, and it was the right thing to do, of course, of course. Tell me about it, says Carly, off script, thirsty for tears. He was in so much pain, Willa says, generic, universal. And the doctors, they weren't any help, established common enemy. He was puking a lot? Question mark, subtext, can you do the work of empathy this confession begs for? Yes, nods Carly, I'm waiting to do that work. And shitting blood. Tone, I have not shared this detail. I have held on to this until right now. Carly stares at the script, worried her heart, encased so long in the pantsuit carapace of professionalism, lacks the capacity for true connection. Serve up the red meat. At the end, he waited until my mother was out of the room. Mother, not mom, deeper backstory implied. She went out to get him coffee, even though it made the shitting worse. Touch on previous points, elaborate detail. As soon as she was out the door, he took my hand and said, Willa, before I can let go, I need to know you're going to be okay and put this behind you. Don't let this change who you are. Willa nods, like when Ms. Sanderson defined resilience, a definition Willa has now illustrated via excruciating personal narrative. And I promised him I would. Catch yourself, correct. You are detail-oriented under duress. Wouldn't, Willa says. I promised him I wouldn't. Let it. Change me. Her corrections add rhythmic emphasis. That must weigh on you, Carly says. Willa sees the trap, swerves. You know, it's been a year, she says. Confident, assured eye contact. Who's resilient? You are. Until you asked, I hadn't thought about it, which I feel like would make him proud, happy. Filial duty first, personal emotional health subsequent. I'm certain it would, Willa. The interview is over. Ms. Sanderson won't be calling Willa's references fake. She's made up her mind. Willa strides down the hall, heels clacking on tile. She's not the sexy substitute. She's the new teacher the boys think they have a chance with. They don't. She ignores the other applicants in the lobby, unable to conceal her pity. Yes, you are that fucked. In the padded depths of a coat pocket, her phone buzzes. Hey, Dad. No, it went well, I think. Now? Couple errands. Yes, I'll be home for dinner. I know it is. 6 on the dot. Love you too. That's it. All right. I am happy to introduce Melanie Conroy-Goldman. Melanie Conroy-Goldman is the author of The Likely World, a novel from Red Hen Press. A professor of creative writing at Hobart and William Smith Colleges, she was a founding director of the Trias Residency for Writers. Her fiction has been published in Southern Review, Story Quarterly, in anthologies from Morrow and St. Martin's, and online at venues such as mcsweeney's.net. Ladies and gentlemen, Melanie Conroy-Goldman.
Hi, everyone. I am going to read to you from a brand fresh short story written in the depths of our quarantine. And I hope maybe some of you who've been trapped inside and getting a little stir crazy might recognize something in it. It's a little longer than the piece I'm going to read. I made some cuts, but I think you kind of get the gist of it in the part that I'm going to read. Okay, here I go. I know my house is a woman because she has a migrating trap door. I'm in the hallway. Whoops. I'm in the kitchen. I'm in the basement. Whoops. I'm in the attic. I can see the door's outline if I pay attention, and it's possible to tiptoe very carefully around its edges, but it's easy to get distracted in the house. Sometimes, without reason, the house will cackle uncontrollably. The kids think it's fun mostly, the laughter and the trapdoor. My husband doesn't seem to notice. Huh. The house thinks that's funny. She's cackling now. It's a horsey sound, gasping and indelicate. Her laugh is a mean laugh, so I think. One night, the house takes me to a room I've never seen before. I'm standing at the stove making dinner. It's tricky work because I have 3 pans going, one full of oil for deep frying, and I'm trying to time them out. No one tells you how much math is involved in cooking. I drop a battered onion ring into the grease and whoosh, I'm in a new room. This one is a kind of a smoking room, very leather and brown. It's lined with rich looking books. There's an out-of-date globe, Yugoslavia, the Belgian Congo. A half-smoked cigar burns in the ashtray. What choice do I have? I select a volume. I settle into an armchair, open to the middle of the novel, and yes, I smoke the cigar. I think to myself, maybe the house is on my side. Ha. Of course, when I drop back into the bathroom where my husband is languidly peeing, the dinner has burned. The fire alarm is sending its shockwaves. The cat, angry and arched, gazes at the grease fire, the blackened wall. I'll call for pizza, says my husband, his fly still gaping. The next evening, we're having everyone's favorite, dumplings. I can't eat many because they make me immediately fat, but they're so good. I typically sneak one while I'm cooking. It's okay that I always do the cooking because my husband does other things. He pays the bills, for example, which is very stressful, and I'm happy to have off my plate. Also, if you're wondering, the kids are helpful to a certain extent. True, we have to nag them and they shirk something awful, but they contribute, really they do. Anyway, the dumplings are nearly gone. There's one left in the dish, which I've been saving for after I filled myself with salad. My husband reaches for it. That's Mom's, says my daughter. Oh, says my husband, withdrawing his hand. Sorry, I thought you'd had some. It's okay, I say. I really shouldn't anyway. I'm basically full of lettuce. Dad, says my son, shaking his head. Mom should have it. I laugh. Guys, I'm fine. It's fine if your dad has the dumpling. That's when it starts. A deep, pleasured cackling, which is still sounding by the time the dishes are done. No one eats the dumpling. House, I think. House, I really didn't want it. Much later, when the dumpling is cold and in the garbage, I scoop it into my mouth and savor its flavor slightly mingled with coffee grounds. A terrible thought occurs to me. Is the house always watching? Is it watching me now? The cat for sure judges from the windowsill. Fuck you both, I think, naughtily. Saturday. It's almost not worth going into. Fucking house. I've just gotten out of the shower and applying a gel mask to my face when my daughter knocks. I have to pee, she says. Well, I'm just finishing anyway. I step into a towel and wrap myself up. Not long ago, she could have just come in, left the flushing till later. The house isn't perfect either. Her water pressure, don't get me started. Anyway, my daughter is a teenager now, and apparently her urination has become a secret ritual that would be ruined if I were showering simultaneously. My daughter sidles past me, and as I step into the hallway, the house begins to laugh again. I drip, she cackles. The mask on my face goes into rigor mortis, squeezing my pores together in its impossible, rejuvenating physics. Okay, I think I get it. Ha ha, you can stop now. Still, the house goes on and on. When she finally stops, my daughter is running the tub and singing a pop song. Women, I think, crazy bitches. There follows a bad week when the house is constantly dropping me into the basement, which is not a pleasant place. Cobwebby, full of ancient asbestos, errant recycling. I stomp up the stairs for the 20th time. There are spiders in my hair, probably. The family in the kitchen sees me emerge, red-faced and angry. They laugh along with the house. Fuck. Around 7:30 that night, my family begins to drift, hopefully, into the kitchen. It's raining outside, dreary. I have an ancient bag of Halloween candy cradled in my arms, and I am eating sticky morsel after sticky morsel, scattering the wrappers on the ground. They consider the cold stove, my scowling chocolate smeared face, and step back. Should we just get drive-through? My husband asks. I curse at my candy pile. I've been so good this week, and now it's all shot to shit. I start to cry. The house begins to cackle. It cackles and cackles and cackles. The family stare at me. It's not my fault, I say. They look to one another and then back in my direction. It never does this to me, says my daughter. My son and my husband nod reluctantly in accord. My son says, not once. Even if I were to, say, smoke weed out the bathroom vent, which I would never do, it just basically ignores me. Sorry, Mom, says my daughter. I really think it is you. Not necessarily, says my husband insincerely. Can you fix it? Asks my son. It's a little embarrassing. I reel on them. You picked this fucking house, I tell my husband. I wanted the nice one with the rose bush, but no, this one would hold its value better, you said. And you, I say to my son, we all know you smoke weed. The vent doesn't do anything. We just don't care that much. To my daughter, who sparkles with fear and lip gloss, I offer this curse. You won't be any different. I don't care if you're poly or whatever. It won't change a thing. You'll have your own fucking house someday. The house, my family, goes silent. I believe they are aghast. Then a door opens in the floor, and I'm outside. It's evening. I'm wearing my slippers. A cold rain is falling, but it's fine. I walk through the streets, breathing the wet air. Behind me, the house is smiling. And that's it. Thank you. I now have the supreme honor of introducing Kenneth. And Kenneth McLaurin has given me the responsibility, the burden, but also the extreme honor of giving the speech that he would have given had he been able to accept in person his well-deserved award as as Ithaca's best 2020 comedian. And he is the best, people. So just imagine Kenneth is saying this. I would like to thank God and my family. Without the support of my daughter, Sankofa, my son, Kenneth, because Kenneth, am the kind of guy who names my son after me, and my wife, Singtrice, I would not be here accepting this award. This honor is not mine alone, because it's Kenneth's. It has been a wonderful journey creating comedy in Ithaca, bringing people together, providing stages for diverse voices to be showcased, diverse voices like my own, and positive connections all around. Laughter has been fun to be a part of. I want to thank all the people who've been part of this comedy journey with me, the Tan Holmes duo, JSK, JYL, Uncle Joe, and Big Time Barbershop, where, as you can tell, I regularly get my hair cut. The venues that opened up their spaces to us, everyone who came to a show, laughed at a joke, and anyone who I didn't mention directly, y'all, because that's how I talk, I say y'all. Y'all are included, and I want to say thank you for the good times, new friends, great memories. Ithaca, stay safe, sane, socially distant, sanitized, and remember, life's a joke. Find the funny. Kenneth McLaurin.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm done. That's it. I'm finished. No, so I had things that I had written down because I'm here with all these wonderful literary people, like folks who've written books and doctors and professors and whatnot. But like Jen's story earlier about the nipple was so engaging. I dug it. And like one of the things that was interesting is when you were like, hey, I have a story about a nipple. I got all excited because I like nipples, right? And I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun. And I started picturing nipples in my head, right? And then you started to describe it and I was like, oh, not the same nipple. It was a totally different nipple. And what's ironic is I had actually written a joke about this earlier. So one of the things that I was going to do to read things I've written were going to be some of my Instagram posts. And I wrote an Instagram post about different nipples. Just check it out here. Oh shit, it looks like a raisin. That's what Barack Obama said the first time he saw a black nipple. Now, like, for people who haven't seen black nipples, I know you're like, oh my God, raisins. But like, when I think of that, I'm like, of course, a sweet, juicy raisin. Yeah, so like, that's what I was picturing when Jen was like, nipples growing on walls. I was like, this is gonna be great. And I was like, oh, wrong nipple. I would be scared if a pink nipple grew on my wall, not because I'm scared of pink nipples, but because like, what if my wife was like, yo, did you bring that nipple in the house? I'd be like, I'd have to disavow the nipple, not my nipple. And then like, you know, hey, like, just crazy. So that was one of the things that I thought was interesting that was just there. So I dug the nipple story. I'm looking for more. So another couple of things I had to share was an Instagram story. There's been a lot of things going on in 2020. Coronavirus was one of the big things. And I had a little insight on like coronavirus, you know. It's different because coronavirus really has affected us. And it has affected people in so many ways. And folks have been like, oh my God, like, what do we do? Some people like, we wear masks, we don't wear masks. How do we take this? And I realize it's because effectively, like people just weren't scared of the coronavirus because the only thing it did, like at worst, was kill you. Like if you caught the coronavirus, the only thing you can do is die. But how would people have handled this whole thing differently if coronavirus turned white people black instead? If coronavirus turned white people black, people would happily watch the economy die from the safety of their house and not say shit about opening up until a vaccine was found. Like nobody would be like, hey, we should make sure we stay 6 feet apart. People would be like, yo, stay in your house. This is serious. People out here turning black. The coronavirus turned people black. Folks be wearing mask on mask on mask on mask. You would see people in hazmat suits. Like now they have a sign that politely asks people, please put on a mask that covers your face and nose before you come inside. The coronavirus turned people black. You would have armed security outside tasing anybody who did not have on a mask because they were really messing up public health. The coronavirus turned white people black. All anti-vaccination activists would make an exception for this one. You can see them now. Well, you know, the measles can kill you, but that coronavirus, that turns you black. You know, and it's a little huff. I'm enjoying this soccer mom thing. I don't know. I don't get basketball and Pop Warner football. That's not me. If the coronavirus turned people black, even the president would be wearing a hazmat suit inside a bubble on Air Force One as it continuously flew around the US until a vaccine was found. Like, you know, he would not worry about rallies. There would be no rallies. He would be as virtual as hell. He'd call himself the Max Headroom president. If coronavirus turned white people black, our white allies would not come to the rallies because of the serious public health risk. I have 2 teenage sons, and I wouldn't want them to catch the virus. Have to worry about their safety, you know. They catch that virus and turn black. Next thing you know, the police are stopping them as they're riding their skateboards down the neighborhood. It's dangerous. So we got to stay safe. And another thing, some white women would secretly try to infect their husbands to see if the stories about the girth, largeness, and magnitude of the black man has been endowed with is true. Like, if the coronavirus turned people black, it would be a mess. If the coronavirus turned people black, the police would be so confused on who to shoot. Like, after one of these incidents, you'd be like, damn, I didn't know he used to be white. I can't get in trouble for this, can I? Like, he looked black, right? He looks black. They have to have some sort of coronavirus exemption. And ladies and gentlemen, that was my presentation on if the coronavirus turned white people black. I had something on defunding the police that I actually wrote down, but we're gonna wait for that next time. Thank you very much. I'm Kenneth McLaurin. Thanks to everybody for coming out. Robin making it happen, Chris, JSK, Jennifer Savron, Kelly, Bob, Prowl, and all of y'all. Thanks. I know it's questions and whatnot, so I'm shutting up.
So, hey, does anyone have any questions for these guys? Kenneth, was that like really weird to be doing comedy without hearing the laughter?
No, like, so I'm fairly narcissistic, so it doesn't mind. Like, if I'm by myself with the microphone, I'm okay.
Let's hear some. Hey, you guys have questions for each other until we wait for the audience to have some questions. Who can make up a funny question? By the way, Kenneth, either your t-shirt is backwards or you're backwards.
Damn it.
I'm only telling him that because it was a big concern for him yesterday.
So yeah, if nobody has questions, I have some questions.
Good. Yeah, go for it.
I'll start with Kenneth since he went last. This is a genuine question because I'm really curious. So as a literary writer, people always say start your stories with character. Like anytime you want to write something, you've got to start with character and go from there. And so even though I've never really been able to follow that advice, I do go to character to help me once I have an idea. So I'm curious, like, where do you start when you're writing a stand-up routine? What's that seed? Is there like one place that you always try to start from, or is it different every time? And could you talk us through it a little bit?
I like to say I like to start from truth. I think that's always the best place to go because everybody can sort of agree and understand that. And I don't know and I think with me, I respond to things I see. So it was early 2020 and the coronavirus was occurring and George Floyd had just got killed and all of these things were happening and I was seeing what was going on. And as like the media was just hitting me with all of these things, I was talking to somebody, I was like, man, people would act way different if the coronavirus turned folks black. And then I just decided, hey, that sounds sort of interesting and let me explore it.
It was very funny. It's too bad that it had to be the truth.
And that's what, yeah.
No, it's good. It's the truth. And it was funny because if it was something that I made up and I was lying and it was funny, that'd be bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? Then I'd be a politician.
Great.
So you want to read the questions, Jen?
Sure. I see we have some questions in the chat. Let's see. Emily Hopkins says, I love Chris's beautiful Irish accent. I know your parents were Irish. Is that enough to let you do that perfectly, or did you have to do extra study? Tell us, Chris Holmes.
I extra study. Yeah. No, that's the scariest thing I think I've ever done. I don't know if there's anybody Irish here, but see, America. No, but I mean Irish, like for somebody from Ireland. If is that right? If anybody here was an Irish speaker, like a real legitimate, they would have been like, that's the worst sounding thing I've ever heard in my life. Is that Russian? What were you doing? But everybody here is like, oh, that sounds just, because they're mean and nasty over there about this kind of thing. So it's just funny. It's just what I don't do it in public very much anymore, but it's what I heard growing up. Everybody had an Irish accent except me, and even growing into, I remember I went to a bar in Queens, 15 years ago, and I was the only person in there that was American born, and so I just heard a lot of it growing up, and I can do it, although it scares me, because even if my brother were on this, I don't think he's here, but my brother, he would have been like, that's terrible. Why are you doing that in public? It's a disgrace. So it's funny, because here's the thing, is that when I was a kid, it was kind of a disgrace to have an Irish accent, right? I mean, they were poor, working class, and now you go to the outside world and everybody loves it. I don't know what the hell that's all about. I wish somebody clued me in, because I would have developed it. Anyway, thank you, Emily. It's very kind.
And Melanie Conroy-Goldman says it was totally convincing, Chris.
Oh, thank you.
And Pamela Tan says that fake Irish accent is one of the many reasons I married you.
Primary.
Okay, so Joshua Goldman, hi Joshua, wants to know from Melanie, is that a short story or is there a novel about a laughing house?
No, it's definitely a short story. I don't think I could dwell in the space of a laughing house for a novel length, but thanks for asking.
All right, Allison Fromme, hi Allison, says, not a funny question. Do you write humor differently if you know your work will be read aloud? And I'm actually going to start by answering that one, because the funny thing about the nipple story is that when I started writing it, it was actually really horrifying to me that I was writing it, and I would write a few paragraphs and then I would like quickly shut my computer and I'd be like, ooh, why is this coming out of me? It was completely horrifying me. And then I showed it, when I finished it, to one of my writing groups, and they thought it was hilarious. And I was shocked. And then I showed it to Bob and Melanie, who are my other writing group, and they were like, no, this isn't funny at all. And I thought, oh, it's so funny how, like, depending on how you read it or where you're coming from when you read it, it could be actually funny. So when I was thinking about reading it out loud, I actually read it in a voice that saw the humor in it, but I did not see any humor in it while I was writing it. So does anybody else, do you write humor differently if you know your work's going to be read aloud?
Well, so for me, I write for everything to be read out loud. So it's really difficult for me to write the opposite way. So I find that it's like, I can't not write like I'm speaking, or write for how to speak. It makes even my writing sound terrible. I put vocal fillers in emails like,
Yeah, I've never tried to write anything funny. Like I would never think that I could, which is why I wanted to put this together, just to sort of see like what a mixture of people who are used to writing funny and people who don't think of themselves as funny, like what would we read if we were billing ourselves as funny? Does anyone else want to respond to that before we move on to see if there are any other questions?
Esther has a cool question. I'm just pointing it out to you if you didn't see it, Jen.
Does humor always come from a dark place?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I really think humor comes from everyday life. Like, so, and sometimes things are dark and we find humor in that. And oftentimes that can be like a way to work through stuff. But generally, like, no, man, life is, funny things happen in life all the time. Like things your kids say to you are funny and humorous, you know,
And often
sometimes. Yeah. So I think that, no, humor and comedy just comes from life in general, good places, bad places, good experience, bad experiences.
yeah, I would agree. Cheyenne asks, what is the line between funny and satire?
There is no line. Like a satire can be funny, and funny things can be satirical. I think, you know, satire falls under the big genre of funny in my.
Yeah, I feel like maybe I've always been a little bit self-conscious about my understanding of the word satire. I feel like what Bob read was satire. Would you say that that's true? I feel like it was straight up satire.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's what I was going for, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was really effective. Sorry, Melanie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's satirizing the corporate world and the interview process, but there is a source of humor that has to do with Willa's personality that is also present, that isn't necessarily satirical. That's just sort of, it's more observational and like sort of punchline based, and you know, so I think there's another humor thread in there, even if the genre of the piece is satire.
Yeah, it was funny. I think as a literary writer that my humor often comes from like a more, I don't know, like a deeper place of looking at things that are not pleasant, and wanting to sort of lighten it up a little bit sometimes, you know, because I feel like if I sat down and tried to do what Kenneth does or what Chris does and just write something straight up funny, I would have a really hard time. Who has the most degrees? Anyway, sorry, Chris. Chris Holmes has the most degrees.
I'd like to hear what Kenneth would say about this as well. But you know, when I graduated from college, I spent 10 years probably writing, and I was like, I could always do funny even as a little kid. I don't know how funny I am, but I could always do funny. You say speech or whatever, funny story, whatever. I could do that. I spent 10 years trying to be serious because I was like, that's, you know, it's bullshit. I could do the I can do the I want to be serious. So I wrote serious, and any jokes that came to me, I got rid of them, and I can only do jokes. So it took about 10 years to be like, oh no, I just do the funny stuff, man. That's the only thing. That's what you got, buddy. So.
Oh, what's funny about you, Chris, is like when I first met you, like you come across as a very serious person. And so when I first met you, Chris, like, so Chris had written a film and he was talking about it in this way that sounded very serious to me. And he was like, yeah, it's about a sea glass artist. And it's like a fake documentary about this sea glass artist. And there's this academic who's doing this, you know, who's interviewing him. And he's just describing it in this way. I was like, wow, that sounds really cool. And he's like, you know, do you want to be in it? And I said, sure. Yeah, I'm really excited to be in it. And he sent me the script to read and I read it and I got really nervous. And I went to my husband, Chris, and I was like, I don't know if I should tell him, but this is really funny. And I was scared that I didn't know if Chris Holmes knew that he'd written something funny.
Right.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Well,
Yeah.
you draw people in with your seriousness, you know, and
Yeah.
your sincerity. And then there's a point where we all think, wait a minute, what's actually happening?
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. I was very nervous to like talk to you about it. I was like, and I remember I finally went to you and we're like, this is supposed to be funny, right? You're like, yeah.
Yeah, because if you were wrong, that would have been, you wouldn't be friends anymore.
I would have been like, no.
Well, I could actually see you doing that. No, and then cry.
So it's 8:00. Should we officially release?
Yeah.
People
I just want to
Yay,
I want to thank everybody for coming on to this call. And, look at the schedule at springrights.org. Tomorrow, starting at 3, we're starting earlier and ending earlier. How Books Make a Person on the pleasures and pitfalls of reading to write. 4 o'clock, another reading with a group of people called Life Studies. 5 o'clock, a panel, Succeeding in an Alternate Universe, Pros and Cons of Independent Presses and Self-Publishing, always very popular. And then 6:15, a reading event with our Bob Prowl in conversation with Tom Dunn. So see you tomorrow, right? And everybody have a good night.